All right, good morning. This is Jeff Scott. Today is Thursday, the 8th of September, day 13 of our class. And as it says in here, today we're going to be going over chapter 6 from the Muroc text. But before we do that, a couple things. First of all, people adding here. All right, again, I've just started here. And as it says right here, today we're going to be going over chapter 6 of the Muroc text. I'm going to start doing that in just a few minutes. Now it says, I want to spend the first 10 to 15 minutes going over yesterday's test, talking about the assignments we've done so far, including those that are due Sunday. Okay, the first thing for you to all understand is when I grade the test, all right, I'm not going to bring the test up because I just have to do too much screen sharing then. But what you had on the test for your requirements, I'm going to follow those literally. And what I mean is if you were asked to do X, whatever X is, if you did it completely and correctly, and if that was worth 10 points, you get 10 points. However, if you did not do it completely, you're going to lose some points. Or if it didn't work, you're going to lose some points. Now, I should be able to just change in here. And now my inside Rankin screen, of course, is different than your inside Rankin screen. Okay, I don't even know what yours looks like. I've never looked at a student's screen. But like for me, and hopefully you can see on my screen right now, I'm in inside Rankin. And when I go out to academics, all right, and I go out to this class, I'm not going to click on it because I don't want to embarrass anyone. All right. But if I click on grade book, that's going to have all of your grades in it. Now, good news and bad news. Bad news is the only thing I've graded so far that you've turned in has been your hands-on test 1. Okay? Everybody in the class who took that test got 100%. So that's all that's out there right now. Okay, a couple people have said, well, I'm not getting this or I'm not getting that. I did send everybody in the class an email that basically showed the test and the fact that you got all the points for it. Now, the good news is that I'm going to have plenty of time, I think, this weekend. I'm planning on getting totally caught up on my grading. So all of the homework, labs, and written tests for chapters 1 through 3, I plan on grading first thing, hopefully Saturday morning. And when I get done with that, okay, I'll start looking and see what people have turned in for 4 and 5. Now, the 4 and 5 stuff is not due until this Sunday at midnight. All right. Some people have turned it in already. I've already seen that. Okay. I was able, everybody who turned yesterday's test, I was able to repositories and I was able to open your files. That's, of course, a good thing. All right. Now, I'm going to go on, but before we do, I wanted to do one more thing. Okay. And that is, and it will involve a screen share, unfortunately. So let me change here. All right. And I'm going to bring up a couple of these documents. All right. So, let's see. So what is due this Sunday? What is due on the 11th of September by midnight? The first thing you're supposed to turn in is a completed copy of the Chapter 4 test. We did chapters 1 through 3 as a class. You're going to do the rest of the ones that are assigned by yourselves. Now, if you make a concerted effort, and what I mean is not that you type, you choose C for every answer, but if you make a real concerted effort and you get most of them right, you're going to get most, if not all of the points, even if you miss a couple. So you have to turn in the Chapter 4. You also have to turn in Oops. The chapter 5, let's just put it that way. All right, so the chapter 4 and the chapter 5 written tests. All right, and let's keep going here. You also have to turn in, and I've got it up here someplace. Sorry, I've got a lot of stuff open. I was doing some work for the other class. You have to do the work for chapters 4 and 5 on the extra exercises. All right. Chapter 5 or 4 rather, the calculate area and perimeter. I did that in front of you. Just replicate that. And 4.2, you'll do the accumulate test score data. For chapter 5, give the calculating the factorial a try. You might have to Google how to figure out the factorial. I did 5.2 for you, the calculate change. You will do 5.3, calculate income tax. So again, you are responsible for doing these. That is the homework part, all right, of chapters 4 and 5. So you know I do, so let's see. For the homework, the labs for chapter 4, which are these, again, this convert kilometers to miles. We basically have already done a program like that. That shouldn't be very hard for you to do. Yes, you are supposed to do this one. The chicken farmer I did in front of you. Yes, you are still supposed to replicate that one. All right. And this GUI program for calculating the projected raises. A couple people have told me, I really don't even understand how to do this. Basically, for this one, it's even easier than the console one. You'll input, 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 and input. All right. But all you'll do is you'll take whatever salary was in here, you'll multiply it by 4%, and that'll be the next year's, multiply that by 4%, that'll be the next year's, multiply that by 4%, and that'll be the next year's. That's it. All right. So that's it for the chapter 4 labs. Let's quickly look at the stuff that's assigned for chapter 5. All right. For the chapter 5 labs, again, this one, the wind speed in the hurricane category, all right, I've already done that. So you just find that and replicate that. Yes, you have to do this GPA, but it's very similar to stuff we've done in the past. I don't think it's going to be a big thing for anybody. And I'll tell you what, I was just thinking about this literally right now. If you want to try to do the rock, paper, scissors, go ahead. But we can do that one as a class next week. I have no problem with that. All right, that's probably a good one for us to do, and it'll allow me to incorporate some of the stuff we'll talk about in chapters 6 and 7. So if you want to try that one, number 5 there, go ahead. And if you don't, it's okay. But from this page, you must do number 3 and number 4. And number 4 we've already done, again, as a class. All right. The other part of the homework for chapter 5 is this right here. And again, this one I did for you in class, this test one, console test one. We did it as a class. All right. Then they ask you to do the same program and do it, but do it as a GUI. That shouldn't be hard for you to take it and move it from one to the other. All right, what else is in here? There is this sales program that's in here. All right, this sales program. Give that a try. Okay. And I'll tell you what, if you want, this is probably the hardest one. This thing with the multiplication table, we can do that one as a class next week. So don't worry about turning that one in. So from this page, you will want to turn in lab 4, lab 5, and lab 6. All right. Whatever that one is, lab 5, lab 6. All right, don't worry about, if you want to do the one with the vowels, fine. The problem is, and we've gone through this, I've gone through this with students before, I've gone through this with Mr. Gudmisted, I've gone through this with Mr. Smith when he was here. All right, you've got to do enough problems to show an understanding of what it is we're doing. But at the same time, if I assign 15 problems, you're going to come back and say, I didn't have time to do these. And I'm not even going to lie to you. There were 12 who started in this class. 4 have dropped already. All right. And 2 of the ones who dropped said it's just way too much work. So I'm trying to keep the work as manageable as possible. Now, am I doing a good job? That's for you to decide. All right. If you don't know this, you're going to get a hyperlink at the end of the semester. And with that hyperlink, what you are going to be asked is to basically, you're going to be asked to review me. You're going to be asked to review the book, and you're going to be asked to review the class. All right. And all that stuff, basically, I never see what anybody writes. You'll turn it into something that's anonymous. All right. I don't know how it works exactly, especially with people who are taking classes online. I'm not sure how that works, but it's not really that important. All right. Because I never see it anyway. What they do is they give me a summary of everything. All right. They'll show me the comments. So if you wrote down, oh, I hated him, et cetera, I'll see that. All right. I will, but I don't know who it comes from. So all I've ever said to people is just be honest. All right, I'm going to change my share again. It's probably not going to show right now, but let's see. I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code. What I'm about to do right now, I'll put it out there as a repository, and I'll put it out there so that you can all see it. All right, use it, whatever. So I'm coming in here and I'm creating a new project. I've created a folder already. All right, I'm going to create this project probably 3 different ways, just so you see this, okay? And I'm going to start off by creating a console app in C#, and I'm going to call this CH6 calculator console 01. And like I said, I've already created a folder out here on my desktop that's called chapter 6-7. All right, so I'm going to put it in there. So you might not see all this stuff. It's no big thing. All right, I'm going to put it into a solution that's called CH06-07. All right, and click create. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, either of you, but please, can you now see Visual Studio? If somebody tell me, can you now see Visual Studio on your screen and the beginning of a console app? Can you see that?
No, we can't. It's blank.
All right, then let me set it again, and I appreciate you letting me know. So let's see. Can you see it now?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I'll even put comments in. I'm going to create a simple calculator program that has no extra methods in it. In other words, I'm going to do everything inside of main right now. Okay, so this is going to be almost remarkably simplistic. All right, so I'm going to come in here and it'll work with 2 numbers. So I'm going to come in here and say, I'll make them both decimals. So decimal number 1 and decimal number 2. All right. In addition to that, I'm going to have a sum, a difference, all right, a product, a quotient, and we'll even have a modulus. All right. And I'm going to have another thing that I'm just going to call result. Maybe I don't even need that. So hopefully, taking a quick look at that, this will be the first number I read in. So 27. This will be the second number I read in. Okay, 8. Then I'm going to ask, what do you want to do? All right, I'll ask something simple like a 1 for addition, a 2 for subtraction, etc. So you put in a 1. Sum is going to be number 1 plus number 2. Hopefully that's simple enough that you can, everybody gets it. All right. So I'm going to add one more thing. It's going to be a string, and it's going to be called operation. And again, that's going to be what I want to do. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, etc. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a console dot write, not a write line. I'll say enter number 1. All right. And then number 1 equals, and we'll have to do a convert dot to decimal, and it's whatever we've read in. So read line. All right. I'm going to just then enter number 2. All right. I'll fix that error in just a second. That's got to be console.readline. So we'll fix that. All right. Now we're going to tell the user to enter a 1 if they want to add the two numbers, a 2 if they want to do a subtraction, a 3 if they want to do a multiplication, a 4 if they want to do a division, a 5 if they want to do a modulus. All right. That's what we're telling. So that's going to be in this operation thing in here. So I'm going to build a string right here. So I'm going to say operation equals enter a 1 to do an addition. All right. Then I'm going to say operation plus equals. So I'm going to make this big string here, and you're going to see it when I run the program in just a moment. All right. And then I'm going to say enter a 2 to do a subtraction. Enter a 3 to do a multiplication. I mean, hopefully you can see where this is going. Enter a 4 to do a division. And finally, enter a 5 to do a modulus. All right. And I'm going to put a couple backslash n's there. You'll see why when I run this in a minute. Then I'm going to say operation plus equals enter a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 now, like that. All right, so I've got all that stuff. Now, if I do this, I'm going to say console.writeLine. In fact, I want to make it I think a right, but we'll see. Right, and I'm going to put in operation. Now, what I've done so far may or may not make sense to you. and it's okay if it doesn't. But I'm going to run this in just a second to see if it works the way I want it to be working. I need a console.read line, so after it does all that, the program stops. If I've done this right, it should come in and say enter number 1. I should be able to enter a number. Then it should say enter number 2. I should be able to enter a number. Then it should come in there and say enter a 1, enter a 2, enter a 3, enter a 4, 5, and do all these right like that. So I'm going to do a file save. And again, if for some reason when I run this, you can't see the run, okay, I'll change to it in just a second. All right, so let me do the run right here. Okay, the good news is it did run, which means that I didn't have any types of errors in it yet, but I could have logic or other types. So let me bring that screen up. So here's the screen. So enter number 1, and I'll just put 5. Enter number 2, and I'll put 6. Now, as you can see, enter a 1 to do an addition, enter a 2 to do a subtraction, etc. So all of that looks okay right now. I'm not checking anything yet. So I can just hit enter here and the program stops. That's totally fine. All right, let me jump back and change my screen share again. But so far, and hopefully you can now see Visual Studio on your screen, everything's working. That's exactly what I want to have happen. Now the problem is, what if they don't enter a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5? What if they don't do that? All right. And the problem is, if they don't do that, how am I going to know if they want to add, subtract, etc.? All right. So I'm doing this thing in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create one more variable. All right. And I'm going to make it a Boolean. Oops. I can type. So I'm going to make it a Boolean, and I'm just going to call it success. Okay. So let's see, and I'll initialize it to true. All right. So I'm going to assume at the beginning that it's true. All right. Now, why am I doing that? Let me explain it to you. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say while success, and I'm going to put a curly brace there, and I'm going to put the other one over here and move all this stuff over. Why did I do that? Because now this is going to be in a loop and I can check to see whether they entered a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5. So I can check to make sure they've done that. Now remember, when you run the program, like I just showed you, when it's got a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5, when it has that stuff, all right, when it has that, if I put in a 1, it's not the number 1 that goes in there, it's the string 1. Okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put an if in here. So I've written all that stuff. In fact, the read line has to be in there. So let's see, I've done that. And now I'm going to say, so I got to have some place to hold that 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And actually that was supposed to be operation. All right, but that's okay. We'll make another string here that we'll call op, and that'll be whatever they enter, the 1 or the 2 or the 3 or the 4 or the 5. So I'm going to say here op equals console.readline. So now I've read in whatever you entered there. You entered something, you hit enter. But I want to check, and if it's not a 1, and it's not a 2, and it's not a 3, and it's not a 4, and it's not a 5. If it's not one of those, I want to force you to do this again. So if that doesn't make sense, let me write it and then we'll look at the logic. So if op not equal 1, and I'm going to put each one of these things that I'm checking inside of its own little condition here. And op not equal to, oh, grabbed it for a second there, not equal to, and op not equal 3, and Now it's going to run off the page here, so I will move it in just a second. So, and it's not equal to 4, and op not equal to 5. So in other words, what that is saying is I entered, it's going to check. Okay. If that's a 1, then this is not going to be true. If what we entered is a 2, if what we entered is a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5, all right, if it is one of those, this won't be true. But if we entered something that was wrong, all we're going to come in here and do is we're going to say success equal false. All right. Else success equal true. Now, I'm going to take for granted right now that what I just did for you still doesn't make sense. It may make total sense to you, which is great, but I'm going to take for granted right now that it doesn't make sense. So let me save this. All right. And let me run the program. I'm going to change my share again in just a second. So this came up again. Enter number 1, 5. Enter number 2, 3. Now I'm gonna put in something that's not a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. 6. All right. And well, I guess it didn't like that. So let's see. It says that you should, no, we don't want to do this. No, I don't want to leave. All right. So what happened? If op not 1 and not 2 and not 3 and not 4 and not 5, success equal false, that should have come back up here. Oh, okay. There's the problem. Not success. And I'll have to make that false to begin with. I gave it the condition to leave here. All right, so let me try it again. Let me save it and try it again. Like I said, in an ideal world, at least, once I run this and you see it in action, you'll be like, oh, that sort of makes some sense. All right, and that's why I decided to do it like this. All right, when I'd originally written this, I didn't write it this way. I wrote it a different way. But I thought this is going to give me a better chance to show you. So enter number 1, 55. Enter number 2, 11. All right, I'm not going to enter a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5. So I'm going to come in here and say 2, 22. And notice it asks me to do it again. So I'm going to be stuck in here until I put in a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5. Notice if I put in a 1, we haven't coded this yet, but I'm done. I'm now out of here. All right. So that worked. So that logic, at least so far, that logic in the program does work. All right. So what we're trying to do there is to make sure that the user enters a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Once they fall out of here, all we want to do is we want to look and see what that is. All right. And so once we get out of this while loop, so we begin the while right here. All right. So right there, that is the beginning of the while loop. Down here, that is the ending of the while loop. Okay? And technically, we don't even need all of these variables. We can just put in one variable that we'll call result. So I'll change this to, to decimal result. All right? So, what happened? Oh, I removed num1 and num2 also. Try that again. There we go. So I don't need these. There we go. All right. So we come down here then, and now we can say if op equal 1, Well, they asked for an addition. So result. Result. I don't know why it's doing that. Didn't I call it result or didn't I make one for result? I did not. Decimal result. All right. So if op equal 1, now what doesn't it like here? It says use of unassigned. It's letting me know that I have to assign op just in case something has gone wrong. So I just do that and that will go away. Should have gone away, but it didn't. That's okay. We'll still fix it. So result equals num1 plus num2. Number 1 plus number 2. No, we call it, yeah, number 1 and number 2. All right, so we've come in here, we've read in number 1, we've read in number 2. All right, we figured out that they want to do an addition, so we do that. Now, what doesn't it like here? Use of an unassigned local variable op. Console.readline. All right, string op equals. Okie dokie. All right, so still doesn't like something. The errors are going down though. Represents the Boolean true or false. You want that? I'll give you that. Okay. Else, if op equal 2, well, then we want to do a subtraction. So result equals number 1 minus number 2. All right. And I'm just going to keep going down here. Else, if op equal a 3, result equal number 1 times number 2. All right. Else, if op equal 4, result equals number 1 divided by number 2. All right. Else, if op equal 5, result equals number 1 modulo number 2. Now, if for some reason it should never get to this, so what I'm about to put in should never be hit, but just for a little bit of error checking in here, we'll put else, and I'll put in, we'll just do a console dot write line that says illegal operator. That should never be hit, but that's okay. And then when we come down here, all right, we can do this. Whoops, we can say, so we have number 1, we have number 2, we know what the operation is, and we know what the result is. So I'm going to write them out. Console dot write line. All right, and I'm going to say number 1 dot toString. All right. And next, I want to put the operation. So in other words, what I want to type in is something like this. 6 plus 7 equal 13. That's what I want to have print out here, is something that looks like that. So I've got number 1, that would be my 6. And let's put it to 2 decimal places, just in case. All right. And then we want to say plus, and the next thing is there is op. Remember, op is going to be either, let's see. Oh, we don't have the op. That's okay. All right, I'm just going to do it simply then. I'm just going to say the result is. We could get that, but that would be a lot more code, and I don't feel like you need to see that right now. The result is, and we'll put in result dot toString n2. I don't need this. Result is plus result. Use of unassigned. So again, it wants that to be set. So I have to say that is equal to 0. All right. So let's run it. Now, I'm going to run it, but before we do, the problem is going to be still what we've been doing, and that is I'm going to have to run it, stop the run it again, stop the run it again, stop the run it again. I don't really want to do that. All right. So I'm going to put this thing into an infinite loop on purpose. I'm going to tell this whole program to loop on purpose. If you say I don't know what you mean, just follow me for a second. I'm going to say while 1 equal 1, and it always should as far as I know. Okay. I'm going to grab this, put it down at the very bottom. Like that. Now I want to move all of this stuff here over. I don't know why it doesn't like, oh, because there's no triple equals in here. So I'm sorry, I was just writing some JavaScript. There we go. Okay. Now we should be able to run this program again and again and again and again and again. That's good because I want to test it. So I'm going to say here, every time it runs, I'm going to do a console.clear. So every time the thing runs, I'll get a new screen. So let me save this. And let me run it. And it says I got an error, which typically means I forgot to put a semicolon at the end of one of the lines. So let's see. And sure enough, there it is. Save it again and run it. All right, let me change my screen share, and then we're going to run this a few times to see if it works the way we all think it should work. So you should be able to see the background now. So enter number 1, 56, enter number 2, I don't know, 32. Let's do an addition. So 1. The result is 88. Okay, that looks good. All right, now it clears and we get to do it again. So let's do 56 and 32 again. Well, there's an error in there because it should be running through, and rather than saying the result is, okay, it should be running through the whole thing all over again, and it's not, so we'll have to fix it. So let's do that. And to do that, got to play computer here. All right. So we come through here, while success, etc. We do all that stuff. Boom. Okay, so that's our operation. We come out of there, we do this, we do this, we do the reline, we come back into here. All right, we say another while 1 equal 1, boom, boom, boom. All right. So what we'll have to do here is we'll have to reset success equal to false. That's the only way we can force this thing to run every time. So that should do that. Ask for a new operation, etc. All right, let's see if that fixed it. Now you might think, man, you're kind of squirrely this morning or whatever. I'm doing, literally, I have no notes here. I'm doing this off the top of my head. And if you say, why are you doing that? What I'm going to show you is in the next iteration of this program, why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. All right, so save all. Let's run this again. I'm going to change my share so you can watch me run it. All right. So again, let's just a couple numbers, 88 and 12. Let's add them. Okay, the result is 100. 56, 34. Let's do a subtraction. Oops, that was wrong. Okay, that's okay. I should have put in a 2. 56 minus 34 is 22. That looks good. Let's put in more numbers. And let's do a multiplication. All right. All right, let's do a division. Okay. Let's do a modulo. All right, that appears to all be working now. It appears as though the calculator is working. All right, so I'm going to come back in here. I'm in a loop. I'm in an infinite loop on purpose. So to get out, I have to literally click the X right now. Again, I could show you other ways that we could do this, but it would involve a lot more code. I've already written almost 100 lines here. All right, but what I want to do, and I'm going to just start to do this. I'm going to start to do this now, but we'll take a break at 8:55. I'm going to grab all of the code that I put in here for now, just all of it. All right. And I've copied it to the clipboard. So this is the first iteration of this program. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to come in and create a new iteration of the program. This one is called CH6 calculator console 01. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make a new project. All right, it'll be another console app. And this one will be called CH6 calculator console 02. All right. Now, hopefully you can see that on your screen right now. If for some reason you cannot, you'll have to let me know. All right. But I'm going to paste that whole thing in. Now my program is, these two programs are exactly the same. And you may say, yeah, they're exactly the same. Why'd you do that? I'm going to show you in just a moment. All right. I'm going to pull out each one of these things that are in here and put them into their own routines. All right. So I'm going to make a bunch of routines that I'm going to write in here right now. So underneath main, I'm going to write some more routines. So I'm going to say static decimal add 2. All right. And I'll need number 1 and I'll need number 2. I'm not expecting this to make a lot of sense. Return N1 plus N2. Okay. Oh, and I have to let them know that these are both decimals. So decimal and decimal. Okay. So I've got that one done. I'm going to quick copy. Now I've got 5 of them. I've got add 2, and I'm going to call this one sub 2. And I'm going to say return N1 minus N2. I'm going to call this one prod 2. And I'm going to return N1 times N2. I'm going to call this one div 2. And I'm going to return N1 divided by N2. And finally, I'll call this one mod 2. And I'm going to return N1 modulo N2. All right. What did I just buy? After I show you this, you'll probably say not a lot. But now in here, instead of doing the math inside of this routine, I'm going to say result equals add 2, and I'm going to pass in there number 1 and number 2. All right. And I'm going to copy that line down. So result equals sub 2. Result equal prod 2. Result equal div 2. And result equal mod 2. Now imagine that this was a really humongous application that was millions of lines long. And there are applications like that out there. All right. Well, if I knew I was having a problem with my mod 2, now I know it's got to be in this routine that's called mod 2. It's got to be in one of these three or four lines. So what I'm starting to do is modularize my program. I kind of equate modularizing a program to, I don't know what year it was in school, 4th grade maybe. I wrote my first book report where I had to write, and I had to create my first outline where I had a Roman numeral 1, then ABCs and 1, 2, 3s under there. It's kind of what I'm doing here. All right. So I've gone in there and changed all this stuff. All right. So what are we doing here? What are we doing here, etc.? Well, what I want to do is I want to modularize my entire program. So I'm going to grab these 3 lines, I'm going to copy them to the clipboard, and I'm going to come in here and say static input number 1. All right. And I'm going to put all that in there. Console.clear, etc. All right. And I'm going to say here decimal number 1. All right. So static, I got to say what it's going to return. It's about to return a decimal. All right. So I'm going to return this. Return number 1. All right. Now I'm going to go and copy this entire thing. Oops. And now I'm going to input number 2. All right. This will say enter number 2. This will be a 2. This will be a 2 and a semicolon. All right. So now I can get rid of all this and replace it with all of that. I can replace it with input number 1 and input number 2. And I want to set number 1 equal to that. And I want to set number 2 equal to that. What I'm getting to here, and it may make absolutely no sense to you right now, but what I'm getting to here right now is this. All right. In main, ideally, main is going to become what's called a program driver. And a driver in many ways is like a supervisor. All right. Years ago, I worked for a guy and I never understood what he did. He was my supervisor. And then he went on vacation for 2 weeks in the middle of a semester. And all of a sudden stuff started to go to hell. And then I realized what he did. He did a lot of work behind the scenes because he was very good at delegating authority to the person or persons who should have had that authority. Well, we're doing the same thing here with main. Main is going to become a supervisor or a driver. So notice in here, rather than doing that code inline, all right. So we got input number 1 and input number. All right. Now we're calling different routines to do this. We're going to take a break in a couple minutes. And when we do, I'm going to see if I can put all of this into a routine as well. All right. And we're going to take the output when we're all done and we'll put that into a routine. So what we're doing is rather than writing everything in one big main, all right, rather than putting everything in one big main, we're writing separate routines. All right. That's what chapter 6 is all about. All right. So, like I said, I'll come back and I'll fix these in just a couple minutes. We'll get this to run. And then I'm going to take and make this one more time, but I'm going to make it, and I'm going to make it as a GUI program. All right. And we're going to go and copy basically all of this code in and just see what we can still use. We're going to have to change some stuff when we make it GUI, of course. There's no console. All right. So everything with a console in it is going to have to be changed. But we'll see just how much of the stuff that's in here we are able to save. All right. So this right here, this is going to be one routine. And it's going to basically right there, it's going to be called, show menu or something like that. This can be another routine. All right. So it is 8:55. Let's take 10 minutes. We'll come back at 9:05 and we'll pick it up right here. All right. I need to refresh my water and then I'll be back in a couple minutes. All right, it is 9:05. Hopefully you can see my screen here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all this operation stuff right there. And I'm going to cut it. You'll see why in a second. But I'm going to say here, operation equals select operation. All right, where is that? Why am I getting an error? Because I haven't written a routine yet called select operation. So static, it'll have to return a string, and it's called select operation. And I'm going to go and paste all that code in there. Don't worry about that. We'll fix the error in just a second. All right, so let's see. And we will say return. Okay, now we're getting errors because we got new variables in here. This is a brand new routine and it doesn't know what operation and op are. That's fine. So I'm going to say string operation, and I'm going to set it equal to nothing. Notice how most of the errors went away. Now string op, and I'm going to set that equal to nothing. Now all my errors are gone, except for returning. I got to return op. All right. So now look at all the code that I've replaced in here. All right. Now I'm going to grab this code that's right here. All of this. Okay. And I'm going to grab all that, and it's going to, what is it going to do? It's going to determine success, really. All right. So I'm going to write a routine in here. that's called determine success. All right. And again, I'm getting an error because that routine doesn't exist. So I'm going to write it right now. I might get some more errors again when I first paste this in, but they'll get fixed immediately. Static bool determine success. All right. So in order for this to work, it's going to need to know what that op was. So string op. All right, that'll fix all that. But when I call it down here, I'll have to pass in op. All right. And let's see. So we'll say bool. Let's call it ret val. That means it's the return value. So make that ret val. And we'll say bool ret val, and we'll assume it's equal to true. All right, and we will return ret val. Now, a lot of this stuff, when you start looking at it now, you're like, I don't have a clue as to what you're doing. That's to be expected. We're taking a larger program and we're continuously breaking it into smaller smaller pieces, mini programs, if you will. All right. So where did I do that? Where is it? Walls. I can't do that yet. No, that's not going to work. Success walls. Let's see. Success. All right. There might still be problems with this. I don't know. Let's see. Not all paths return a code. Redville. Okay. What's that? As we get errors, I'm just trying to fix them. So let's see. I'm going to pull this thing, all of this code out here that I just wrote earlier. It'll be okay because I'm going to put it back in a second. And I'm going to put in here determine result. All right. And then I'm going to put that down here. Paste that in. All right. So we're going to say here where we call that we'll have to return a decimal. All right, and we will have to pass into that number 1, number 2, and up. Okay. And down here, we will need to accept it as decimal number 1, decimal number 2, and string up. Now, as soon as I click here, those errors should start going away very quickly. All right. Most of them have gone. So we'll say decimal result equals 0m. One. And all my errors are gone. Okay, except we have to return result. All right. So what is left? Notice how much our main has shrunk. The code that's in main is now this big because we keep calling other routines. I'm going to make this into a routine too, even though it's only one line. And I'm going to call display output, and it will need the result. So let me get that down here at the bottom. Wait. All right. Now, what I want to do first is I just want to save the program and run it, see if it still runs. All right, so I'm going to do a save all, and I'm going to run. The good news is, at least so far, it hasn't given me any errors. So let me change my share. So you can see the run. If I didn't screw it up, that's always a big if, it should run just like it did before. 44, 8, do a 1, and it's 52. All right, 33, 22, do a 2, that's working. 21, 2, do a 3, that's working. 44, 3, do a 4, that's working. 55, 8, do a 5, that's working. All right. Right now, it's still going to blow up if I don't put something numeric in here, but we're going to fix that in a bit. All right. But if I put in a bad value in here, like 234, it just tells me to do it again. So the program is still working. All right, that's good. So now I want to take about 10 minutes, go back over the entire program, everything that we just did. So let me change my screen share. Back to the program. Now, like I said, I threw this at you very quickly, and what I did may make almost no sense. But what I've done is I've written the same program we had before, but I broke it up into modules. All right. You can call them modules, you can call them methods, you can call them functions, but it's as though, okay, this is the example I've given to people before, and I don't know if it's a good one or not, but it's the one I'm going to use. All right. I decide that I'm going to, I've actually, let's just say, I've actually invented a widget. All right. Maybe one of those spinner things that were in a couple years ago. Okay, so I invented the spinner. And I'm thinking, I can sell these. So out of my garage, I can make, maybe I make a couple of them a day or whatever. Maybe I make even 100 of them a day. So all of a sudden I put up a website and I put it out there and I start getting in orders, hundreds of them. Well, I'm not going to be able to make hundreds of these a day. Plus, I'm not going to be able to hold all those in my garage while I'm making them. So what do? I buy a building or I rent a building and I start hiring people. All right. So I hire a few people. Now we're doing fine. But now somebody who really liked this spinner writes an article about it. Now rather than getting hundreds of requests, I'm getting thousands of requests a day. All right. So I have to hire even more people. So we move to a bigger building. All right. You get the idea. I'm kind of the main in here. And what I'm doing is rather than doing all the work myself, what I end up doing is delegating a lot of the work out to other people. That's what main is supposed to do. All right. So I've created these variables here, but other than the creating of the variables, really, main is not very big anymore. All right. So rather than main doing all these operations, main is calling a method, another method, another method, another method, another method, and another method. So rather than all of that work being done inside of main, it's now being delegated out to about 6 or 7 individual methods. And you might look at that and go, well, did that really bias a lot? You know what? In this particular program, not a whole heck of a lot. But when you start looking at real applications that are thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of lines long, all right, you start to notice you can't write one routine with 1,000,000 lines in it. All right. If you've got a program with 500 lines in it, you're actually much better off having 50 routines at 10 lines apiece than you are 10 routines at 50 lines apiece. So you keep going and you keep basically making things smaller and smaller and smaller. And it has a couple of effects. One of them is if something goes wrong in that operation, I know right where to go. I know right exactly the routine to go to. If my result isn't correct, I know that I get better start here, etc. So that's one thing. The other thing it does is as we start to break this down into multiple routines, again, just like we broke down into multiple routines, all right, when I mentioned about me having, creating spinners. Now, when I start to break this down into multiple routines, multiple people can work on this. All right. And that's what it really buys you in the end more than anything else. All right. So I'm going to grab this entire program just so I don't forget to do this. We're going to go over it in just a second, but I'm going to grab everything that's in here. And I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard. You won't see this, but I'm going to throw it out here into a notepad file, just so I have it for in a couple of minutes. So let's go over the program. All right. The program always begins execution at main. So we come in here and we declare these variables. We could say this here equals 0. We could say right here that this equals 0. All right, equals 0. This string, we could set it equal to the empty string. This one we already have set equal to the empty string. This Boolean we've set equal to false. So what am I doing here? Well, I am declaring and initializing variables, program variables. Now, you may or may not have noticed, all of these are initialized inside of main. So not only are they program variables, they are what's called local program variables. The only one who really knows about these variables is main, unless I choose to do what's called pass them to other routines. So I've created these 6 variables right here. And here I'm purposely going into an infinite loop. Why am I putting it into an infinite loop? So the program will allow itself to run over and over and over and over again. That's what I want to have happen. All right. So what am I doing here? Well, I want to set number 1 equal to input number 1. Okay. And what does input number 1 do? It says, clear the screen, then say input number 1, then set number 1 equal to that, and then return that. Now, hopefully you noticed a couple things about this. Number 1, notice the word static there. Anything that deals directly with main, since main is static, we must make the things that deal with main static. Not my rule, it's just a rule. This is the type of variable it's going to return. If we were to return nothing from this routine, if there was no return statement in here at all, we'd put the word void in there, V-O-I-D. That means that literally it is void of a return. So we say static, then we say the type of variable that we're returning, all right? And then we got the name of the routine, all right? The next thing to notice is if you look in here, I'm going to highlight both of these. Other than the fact that one is called input number 1 and the other one is called input number 2, they're virtually the same routine. I'm writing the same routine virtually twice. And guess what? I don't have to do that. I can replace these two routines. I'm going to leave them up there so you can see them, and I'm just going to copy one of them. All right. I'm going to keep those up there so you can see them. And I'm going to put in here, I'm just going to call this input number. And I'm going to say console.clear. All right. I'm going to say enter number. And I'm going to say number is equal to this. And I'm going to return number. All right. But I'll need to know which number I'm working with. And technically, I don't even need to know that. So let's see. I'll have to come in here and say decimal number. All right. I'll set it equal to 0.0M. All right. And then at the end, we're going to return number. Why did I do that? Because now with this one generic routine, I can grab these two routines, these two that I just added. I can get rid of them because I'm about to replace them with one routine that's called input number. All right. So decimal number, let's see. That's why I didn't. Okay. There we go. Now, when I call these, they're going to give me errors because I'm trying to call routines that don't exist anymore. So what I just did was I've started doing what's referred to as refactoring my code. I wrote it, I got it to work, but now I'm trying to make it work a little better. Why is that better? Because what I did here was I replaced how many of our lines there are here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I replaced 14 lines with 7 lines. I think that's a win. That's 7 less lines that I have to worry about. Now, this is going to look a little bit more generic in that it's going to say enter number. What if I wanted to say a number 1 or a number 2? What if I wanted to say that? What if I want this to say enter number 1, and when it runs the second time, I want it to say enter number 2? Then when I call it, I can pass it a 1, or I can pass it a 2. Now it's going to give me an error until I go back and fix that. But it's going to come in here and I'm going to say, where is it? Input number, and I'm going to say string S. Doesn't matter what S is. All right, and I'll say enter number S. So now it should say enter number 1, or it'll say enter number 2. We'll find out in just a second whether or not that works. And I want that colon on the end, so I've got to manually go in there and add it. All right, so let's look. I'm going to stop my program run. I'm going to save the program. I'm going to run it again, which of course means that I'm going to have to change your screen share. And there it is. Notice it still says enter number 1. Okay, so 45. Now it says enter number 2, 56. And if I add them, it should be what, 101, I think. Boom, still works. All right. So what I am showing you in here is a few things. I am showing you how to start modularizing programs. And once you modularize them, I'm showing you how to start refactoring them so that rather than having a humongous program with hundreds and hundreds of lines, we can sometimes cut down the number of lines we have quite a bit. All right. So we declared these variables. We put this program into an infinite loop. We told it to input the first number, and we put that into number 1. We told it to input the second number, and we put it into number 2. Then we've got this thing called success. We are automatically setting it to false. Why? Because we want to go into this loop And we want to be able to set the operation. And that operation, when we select this, this is going to be our 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, as long as the person puts in a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But you can't count on human beings to always do the right thing. So we are going to reset this success variable that's here and here and here, and we're going to call determine success. So what does select operation do? Remember this? That's that little menu that we wrote. Enter a 1 to do this, enter a 2, etc. And we return whatever it is, they are read in for that value. We return it as up. Then we call determine success. And we say if what they entered wasn't a 1 and it wasn't a 2 and it wasn't a 3 and it wasn't a 4 and it wasn't a 5, then we're going to want to return false. Otherwise, we're going to return true. Then we come back up to our program here. All right, if success was true, we have to run this again and again and again. All right, until we fall out. Then we call this to determine the result. That's the one that's going to call add to, or sub to, or prod to, or div to, or mod to. All right, so if we get down to that point, we have a valid operation and 2 valid numbers. Then we're just going to display the result. Okay, now what I will do, I don't want to do it right now because I don't want to take up any more time than this. But what I'm going to do is, before you get this sent to you, and it'll be sent to you this morning, but before it's sent to you this morning, all right, I'm going to add some more comments in there. So hopefully that helps. And like I said, we haven't even gone into chapter 6 yet. You might say, yeah, we haven't, and my head's spinning. I get it. All right. Just because there is a lot of stuff in this chapter, there's even more in the next chapter. All right. So I've now written 2 apps that both work. CH6 Calculator Console 01, CH6 Calculator Console 02. Okay. And let's see, if I go back to 01, I did have a little comment in there. So I'm going to copy that comment into here so it looks a little better. All right, now say create a simple calculator program that has extra methods. All right, so I've got that done. And now what I want to do is I want to run this, write one more program, and the other program that I write here. All right, did I do that wrong? This has extra methods. That does, yeah. Okay. I want to write a new one, and I want to write this as a GUI, as a graphical user interface program. All right, so I think I could be able to close that now. So I'm going to right mouse click on my solution. I'm going to choose add new project. This will be a Windows form, and this one will be called CH6 calculator GUI. I don't think there'll be a 02, but just in case, I'll put 01 there. So there's that, and create. And there's my interface, which right now looks bad because there's nothing in it. All right. So as we always do here, the first thing I'm going to do is come in here, click on the form, right mouse click on the form, and do a rename. And I'll call this FRM calculator. Yes, I do want to change everything, and I will change my form text from form 1 to a simple C# GUI calculator. All right, maybe not the best thing, but that'll work. All right, then let's think about it. Well, let's come in here just because I like to do this. Maybe you could care less, but I'm going to change my background color. Let's use the green today. Okay, there's that. And I will need what? I'll need a label that says number 1. I'll need a label that says number 2. Let's see. I'll introduce something here that you haven't seen before just because it'll make our lives easier in the end. And I'll need a label for the answer, and I'll need my 3 buttons. So let's start by putting in our 3 buttons, and they will be our calculate, our clear, and our exit. So let me put those in. There's calculate, there's clear, and there's exit. Okay. All right. Then, as I said, I will need, I'm going to come in here with a label right away. Move that down. I'm going to immediately change my auto size on here to false, so I can make this bigger. Okay, and this will, in just a minute, that will say enter number 1. Let's make the back color again 1 shade darker so it stands out. So that'll say enter number 1 in just a moment. Okay, all right. This will say enter number 2, and this will say operation. All right, and then finally this will say result. Okay, I think I can move these up a little bit like that. All right, so now we need some text boxes. So we need a text box that's going to hold number 1. All right, and we'll move that over a little bit. Copy it, paste. That's going to hold number 2. Paste again. That's going to hold our answer. Now I'm going to show you a control we have not talked about yet, not to confuse you, but because I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it'll make this, what we're about to do, a little bit easier. And that control that I'm going to put in here is something that is called a combo box. All right, and that's right there. This is going to hold a plus sign. It's going to hold a minus sign. It's going to hold an asterisk for multiplication, a / for division. All right, a % sign for modulo. So it's going to hold all that stuff. Okay, now I could make it a lot bigger, but technically with that, what's going in there, it could actually be smaller. I think my interface is done, but let me come in here, highlight all of it as I always do, go over to my font window here, bring that up, and let's make this 20, bold, and Arial. All right, so it's getting there. It's not perfect yet, so let me make this a little bigger. I'm going to grab all of these. Hopefully it'll work if I try making them bigger. There, that looks okay. I'll move that over a little bit. Not great, but that's an acceptable interface in my opinion. So Control A to highlight everything and lock my controls. All right, so let's start changing this stuff. So this will be LBL number 1. All right, and the text for it will be enter number 1. Oops. Okay, I'll get it right yet. So the text will be, how about just number 1? Okay, then this one will be LBL number 2. And its text will be number 2. All right, this next one will be operation. All right, and its name will be LBL operation. And this one here will be result, and its name will be LBL result. Just because I'm a little squirrely this way, I'm going to highlight all of these, go down to the text alignment, and I'm going to change it to middle right. I like the way that looks better, so that's all lined up. So this was LBL number 1. This will be TXT number 1. This was LBL number 2, so this will be TXT number 2. All right. This is a combo box. And since this was LBL operation, this will be CBO for combo, CBO operation. All right. This is LBL result, so this will be TXT result. All right. So those are all named. Let's do our buttons. So this first one will be BTN calculate. And as always, it'll have the string on there, calculate. The next one will be our clear button. And it will be BTN clear. All right. And the last one will be BTN exit. And it'll have the text on there of exit. All right. It's getting there. So the result, this result is going to be determined by this, this, and this. So this is a read only. The other ones are not, but the result is a read only. So I'm going to set that to read only. So that's done. My accept button rather will be calculate. My cancel button will be clear. So let's set both those. So the accept button will be set to BTN calculate. The cancel button will be set to BTN clear. And our Windows start position, we will change to center screen. All right, so what's left to do? Let's do our tab order next. Okay, and I will set it to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You'll see that in a minute. So view tab order. Again, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so that's the tab order. Let me do a file save. All right, and then let me do our view tab order so those numbers go away. And then let me double click and there'll be my calculate button in just a second. Double click again, there'll be my clear button and there will be my exit button. All right. Now, you should already know this, but when we clear, we're going to want to clear this. We're going to want to clear this. This is a entity into and of itself, and you'll see what that is in just a second, but we'll want to clear this as well, and we'll want to put the cursor there. All right, so I want to do one more thing first, and that is, this is going to have to be a little bit bigger. So let me go to lock controls again and make that, come on, make that bigger. There we go. All right. So let's go in and start doing this stuff. So I'm going to click on my clear button and I want to do what? Well, this is where I'm going to clear things, right? So txt number 1 dot text equals double quote, txt number 2 dot text equals double quote, txt result dot text equals double quote. All right. For the combo box, and you're going to see what this is in just a minute, but we're going to want to say CBO dot selected index equals 0. And if you don't know what that means, just give me a couple minutes and you'll see it. And then finally, we want to say, let's see, did I miss anything? Clear. So clear those. I've done those 4 things. And then we want to set focus. So txt number 1 dot focus. That should be it for a clear button. For the exit button, you know what I'm doing there. I guess I've accidentally done these. I've clicked on these labels, so I'm going to remove all those in just a minute. Wow, I got tons of stuff here. I'm going to have to remove all those, and I'll do that in just a second. Okay, all right. But before we do that, let's write the code for our exit button. And rather than writing it again, as I've done all semester, I'm going to go in and take it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to type in exit button, even though you can't see this, that's okay. And I'm going to copy that code and put it right there. So now I've got a working, oops, I missed a line. Try that again. Yep, I missed a line. Let me try the whole thing all over again. There we go. Move this over. There. So now all of this stuff should be done. Now remember, I did all these click events. I wish I wouldn't have, but I did, and that's okay. But I'm going to remove them all now because that's just extraneous code. How do I do that? All right. Well, the easiest way is to come back here. All right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that first label. And then I'm going to go and click the lightning bolt over here. And there's LBL number 1 click. I'm going to highlight it, hit delete. That's now gone. Let's go to the next one. Highlight it, hit delete. Now that one's gone. Go to here, highlight it, hit delete. Now that one's gone. Go to here, highlight it, hit delete. Now that one's gone. Now let's just see what we've done so far when I go back here and I view the code. I still have my text boxes, but you'll notice all those labels that were there. All right, none of that code is in there anymore. Okay, so let me change those. So I'll click on my first text box. There's my text changed. So I'll highlight it, hit delete, go to the second one, do the same thing, go to the third one. That one I will want to keep, I think, but we'll see in a minute. But let's go to the fourth one. All right, let's check our code again. And you'll look in here, and now everything other than that combo box, all that code, extra code has been removed. We didn't do our calculate button yet. We'll do that in just a moment. But let's do a file save all and let's run it. Should come up in the middle of the screen. Whoops, I got to change my project, sorry. So right mouse click on the project name, set as startup project, and let's run it now. So there it is. Now there's nothing in this drop down thing yet. We're going to fix that in a moment. But if I put something in here and in here and in here, click clear. Okay. It says out of range. Well, that's because I didn't set that index yet. But the other stuff will clear now. All right. And let's go in and quickly check our cancel button. Or I'm sorry, our exit button. All right. So that works. Now, what we want to put in here, in there, we're going to put in 6 things. First, we're going to put in the words enter and operation. Then we're going to put a plus sign, then a minus sign, then a multiply sign, then a divide sign, then a modulo. There's 2 ways we can do this. Okay, there's 2 ways that we can do this. I can come in here and click on this, come over to here to my properties window, get my regular properties back again. All right, and when I do that, what I'll find is this thing has got a thing called items in it. Okay, when I click it, it brings up a box. So I'm going to say enter operation. Then I'm going to put in a plus sign. Then I'm going to put in a minus sign, then a multiply, then a divide, then a modulus. And you'll say, well, what did that do? It's much easier to show you. All right, it's much easier to show you what that did. So let's do a file save all, and let's run it. Now I've got enter operation, and I've got my different signs. So if I choose this, all right, it'll hit there. It'll be minus, multiply, divide, etc. You get the idea. All right. Now, too, when I click clear, I don't get that error anymore. See that? Okay, so my clear works, my exit works, so we got to calculate. All right. Now, but before we do that, I'd like it when the program starts, I'd like this to say enter operation in there, and it doesn't right now. But you'll notice when you click clear, then it does say it. Well, how did we get that to say that? We took this line that said CBO operation dot selected index equals 0. I'm going to copy that line and I'm going to put it into my form load event. Remember that runs when the program starts. So now when I start running the program from the get-go, it says enter operation. That's good. All right. So I've got all this stuff. And the one reason I'm showing you this right now, and I'm doing it like this, is when we get into chapter 7, we're gonna be talking about how you validate stuff to make sure it's got the right type of value in it. So I'll come back to this program on Monday and make additions to it, where if you don't put anything in there, you'll get an error message. If you put something non-numeric in there, you'll get an error message. Same thing with this one. And excuse me, in here, if you choose divide and that number is 0, we'll give you another error message. So that's all stuff that you have, for lack of better words, to look forward to. All right. So that's all fine. But the problem is right now when I run the program and click calculate, not a doggone thing happens. All right. So let's make some stuff start happening. I'm going to go back, and you can't see this right now, but I'm going to grab, this is all the code that we had from when we did this in the console app. Okay. And I'm going to come and double click on my calculate button. I'm going to go down to the bottom of my program, the very bottom, and I'm going to put in a comment. And what I'm going to do in there is I'm just going to paste in all that code. Now, I'm not going to use all of it, but there's a lot of it in here I can use. All right. So the first thing that it says in here is declare and initialize local program variables. That sounds like a good place to start. So I'm going to grab all of that code. I'm going to come up and inside of my calculate, all right, I'm going to put that in there. Now I'm getting all those greens because it's saying I've got these variables in there that I'm not using. Okay, but that's fine. We're going to start using them in just a moment. So I'm going to, as I go and add stuff, I'm going to remove it from here. So now I can I say while 1 equal 1 again? Yes, I can do this whole thing. I'm going to get errors because I'm going to be calling routines that I have not yet written. Okay, so don't worry if a bunch of errors come out in here. Okay, you notice all the red. We're going to fix that right now. And most of the fixes that are in here are pretty simple. I have to change the word static that's in all this stuff. So I can get rid of this now because I've done that. I have to change the word static to the word private. Static is basically almost exclusively used for console programs. All right. You can use it in a GUI, but we haven't talked about why you'd want to do that yet. So all I'm doing is I'm changing all of these again from static to private. All right. Now I'm going to copy all of this code, and there's still going to be errors. I have to say it right now. There are still going to be errors. All right. But let me do a Control X to copy. That's everything. Now let me go down here and let me paste that in. Like I said, there's still errors. Don't worry about it. But you'll notice it's all on the names right here. There's not really a lot of errors in here anymore. All right. And I can get rid of this now. All right. So let's start getting rid of these errors that we put in here. Okay. So I'm going to take it from the top. Number 1, number 2. Well, it looks like I didn't copy those over. So let's put those in right now. Or did I? Yep, they're right here. Number 1 and number 2. All right. The problem is I put this code in my clear button instead of in my calculate button. So let's remove that code from here. All right. All the code I put in the clear button, and I'm going to move it into the calculate button. That was just stupid on my part. All right. So now I've cleaned up my clear button. That's good. So let's start cleaning this stuff up. Okay. Number input equals input number. Okay. Input number with a 1, input number with a 2. So let's see. Do we have input number in here? Success. There's input number. Private decimal input number. And it says a namespace cannot directly contain members such as etc. I think the problem right now is somehow I've screwed up my curly braces. So we're just going to dig through this until we find out what's right in here. So here's the calculate. Boom, boom, boom. All right. All right. I had one too many curly braces in there. That removed all the errors that we had in here. So let's see what we still have. I guess we do need in here. Let's see. While one console.readline. All right. So number 1 equals input number. And this says the name does not exist in the current context. Again, the problem that I have is with a curly brace in here someplace. And oops, it looks like it might be right there. Looky there. Almost all those errors have gone away. All right, so I was able to copy over virtually everything from my console program into my GUI program. All right, now we're still going to have errors because this is calling input number 1. What is that? Well, input number 1, wherever that was, has got those console.reads and console.writes. I don't need those anymore. In fact, I don't even need a thing in here that does this. Okay, and what I'm saying is this. My number 1, decimal number 1 is equal to convert dot to decimal txt number 1 dot text. All right. Number 2 is the same thing, but it's txt number 2 dot text. So that'll be a 2, which means I no longer need this routine that's called input number. We don't have to do that anymore. This is something you have to do in a console program that you don't have to do in a non-console program. All right, so we've got that. We don't need this anymore because we've already set those up there. We could set them there, we could set them here. It doesn't really and truly matter. It's in the calculate routine, so it's right near the top, so we don't need that anymore. All right, so let's see. Doesn't even look like we have errors, but let's see what we're doing here. Operation equals this select operation. That's this. We don't need this anymore. All right, so let's see. We don't need to tell the user to do that because what the user is going to do now is they're going to select one of the things that's in here. All right, so for our operation, go back. Okay, we don't need that routine anymore that says select operation and success. We don't need this. This whole thing can go bye-bye. Okay, all right. So I don't think we're going to need that variable anymore. We won't need that operation variable in there anymore. We won't need this in there anymore. All right. But what we can say is what? All right. We've still had that thing called op, but what is that now? It's going to be equal to CBO, our combo box, operation dot items dot, oh, what is it? Dot selected text. All right. And here we'll do that. We'll still pass number 1 and number 2 and op. That's all correct. That's still correct. So let's go down and look at this stuff. We'll fix that in a minute. That's correct. We don't need this selected operation anymore because it's gone. We don't need that determined success anymore. That's gone. We still will need this determined result. And when we print it out, instead of a console.readline, this will go inside of our txt result dot text is going to be equal to that. The result is. All right. And we don't need that anymore. Now I'm just looking through this quickly, but the problem is now we had this thing in here. If op equals this, if op equals this, that, well, that's not right now. Okay. So where we've got all this, let's see, result equals determine result. Now we can do a switch based on what did they enter here? Did they choose plus? Did they choose minus? Did they choose multiply? Did they choose divide? Did they choose modulo? Or does it still say enter operation? So that's how we're going to determine which one of these things in here to call. Okay. So let's see. We will do a switch on. What happened there? Switch on CBO operation dot items dot selected text. All right. And now if it's a 0, that means that what? Well, if it's a 0, what that means is it still says enter operation. So case 0, I don't really want to do anything. I could bring up a message box that says what? You must choose an operation from the list below. Something like that. Okay, so I'll put that in there. And then I'll say invalid operator chosen, something like that. All right. And it will be what? It'll have buttons dot okay, and it'll have an icon. And really it's an error because they chose something, and we'll make it a warning. And this isn't working because of course it's messagebox.show. All right, which fix that. And a semicolon there. Let's bring this down a little bit so you can read all of it. So if they did that, we want to do all that stuff and then break. Case 1, we want to call add 2, and we want to pass in number 1 and number 2. And then we want to, then we want to break. Case 2, we want to call, so I'm just getting rid of these as we're doing this. So we want to call sub2 and then break. Case 3. We now want to call prod2 and then break. Okay. Case 4. We want to call div2 and then break result equal. Sorry, I should just say div2 a 5. We're going to take a break in a couple minutes. Mod 2, number 1, number 2, and then break. And for a default, this should never happen, but if that does happen, just like we did before, we're going to do the same message box and break, just like we did before. Now we are almost done. Notice we're getting some errors here, add to, sub to, etc. All right. We'll need number 1, we'll need number 2. Selected text, that's an error. All right. And we will now need result. Okay, so this isn't going to return anything. That's so boom. I'm going to go 2 more minutes. We won't finish this, but what I'll do is after the break, I'm going to finish talking about this and then we're going to go over chapter 6. All right, so that fixed all that. Now this can all be removed. Okay. These are all private, that's good. Okay, we're just about there. So it is 10:05. Let's take a break and let's come back, please, at 10:15. We'll finish this up and then jump right into chapter 6. All right, see you in a couple minutes. All right, I'm back. Let's see. Looking at everything here. So let's see, we got that, we've got this. Tabbed. That should be tabbed. That's okay. Tab that. And that. And that. I'm just trying to line stuff up a little bit here, that's all. That. And that. Now I can move that over. Good. All right, it is almost done. You'll notice in here that I'm still getting errors here, and that's because it's expecting these things are strings. I believe that's what it is. So that was nice. I want to change that to 0 like that. And now the error is gone. So let's just change all of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Now, it's not perfect by any means. All right. I know that. So let's see, result. Okay. This result equals display this, and we're now passing there. We're passing in the, what are we passing in there? The result. Okay. So that is in decimal. You better spell right. All right. And I have to pass result into here too. Actually, I'm setting it equal to result, so I don't have to do that. So I can get rid of that, which means I can get rid of this. That fixed all that. All right, number 1, number 2. I'm getting an error on that because there's a T in there. Okay. We print it out. Okay, let's just take a look at it and see what it does. So file, save all. I'm going to run it, see if I get any errors first of all. I do have errors. Let's see if I have a lot of them or just 1 or 2. Cannot implicitly convert type void to decimal. Okay, that's fine. So this determine result, do I still even have that routine? Yep, it's got a void here. Okay, that should be a decimal. And when I'm done, I want to return the result when I'm all done. Okay, so that'll fix part of it. Private decimal return result, good. Now let's see if it looks, my error window is empty, so let's see if it works. All right, 56, 44. I want to add them, calculate. You must choose an operation from the list below. It doesn't like that. Okay, you must. Now I'm in a loop. Okay, that ain't good. So we'll have to get out of that loop. All right. We're still almost there. So let's see. Every time this selected index changed happens, I want to end up calling determine result. All right. So one more thing I want to do here, and that is all this code in here, you're going to see this on Monday, but I'm going to pull all this code out and I'm going to type in there calculate. Okay, just the word calculate, period. All right. Now I'm going to paste it back in. Okay. And you might say, why did you do that? Because you really should not put code directly into button click events. They should act as drivers as well. So in my clear button, I'm going to cut all this code and I'm going to call clear. How about clear all fields and set focus. Way too long a name, but it's fine. So private void clear all fields and set focus. Paste that back in. Did I lose that? Come on. Son of a gun. I lost it. Okay, let's put it back in though. txt number one dot text equals double quote txt number two dot text equals double quote txt result dot text equals double quote cbo question dot selected index equals 0 and txt number one dot focus. Okay, I rewrote that. So clear all fields and set focus. What's the problem? Set does not exist in the current. Oh, there we go. All right, so that's fixed. The exit button, I'm going to remove all that code. And I'm going to write a new routine called exit program or not. Put that code back in. All right. My load event, that's okay. All these are okay. So let's see. All right. So the problem that we still have, this program is almost finished, but the problem that we have is it's not recognizing what we put in there. So let's see. Every time this happens, every time we change the index like that, basically what we want to call is determine result. All right, so in there we want to call determine result. The problem, whoops, the problem is if we type in determine result like that, we're going to get an error because it expects, it'll give us an error eventually. It expects there to be two parameters in there. All right, number one and number two. I'm going to take this number one and this number two, and I'm going to make those global. And I'm going to take result and make it global. Typically, you don't want to do that. You want to have as few global variables in a program as possible. Ideally, none. Right? And when I do this, do I still have them? They're good. I'm not going to set these to anything. So I'm going to do them like that. And I'm not going to set this either. All right. So now what that means by making them global like I just did, I don't have to pass number one, number two, or result to anything. So like in here where I'm passing these, I don't need that anymore. They're global. Where that is, I don't need it anymore because it's global. All right. So everywhere that where I've declared that, those are both global, so they're not needed anymore. This is global, so it's not needed anymore. All right. I don't need any of these because they're global, but I have to change all of the N1s to number ones and all of the N2s to number twos. So let me just grab the word number there. And again, we need nothing there. And nothing there. And nothing there. And nothing there. All right, you'll notice I've got a bunch of errors now. These errors will go away in just a matter of moments. We don't need that anymore for the result. All right. So we don't need to pass these anymore. So all these errors are going to be going away in just a second. All right, so let's see. All my errors are gone. Hopefully it works now, but we'll see. You must choose an operation from the list below. Okay, I get it. So 56, 44. Let's try and add. You must choose an operation from the list below. Calculate. You must choose an operation. Okay, it's not recognizing what we put in there. Okay, that's why I'm getting this goofy thing. So we'll fix that. Okay. So I do have a couple things in here. It says, that might help. These are, no, those are our globals, right? Yeah. And I don't want to redeclare those here. I want to put that, and I want to put that, and I want to put that. It's still not recognizing that. Okay, I'll tell you what, rather than wasting our time on this, I'm coming back to it. Believe me, I'm coming back to it in this period, but I want to jump into chapter 6. All right, so I'm going to change my share, and hopefully what you're going to realize is a lot of the stuff that they mention in this chapter, we have now already gone over. Not everything, of course, but many of the things that are in here. So let's see, right there. So far, we have covered the first 5 chapters in the book. All right, we're making good headway. We're 160 pages or so in. And again, it may seem like we're going really fast, and it will until we get to chapter 11. Then it's going to seem like we're going extremely slow. So chapter 6, as you can see, is on how to code methods and event handlers. There are a few things that are mentioned in this chapter that I am going to go over with you, but they're way out there as far as their importance. They're more advanced features that you really don't have to use. Why am I telling you that? Because as we go through this, how to code and call methods, yeah, that's what we've been doing. How to work with tuples, I'm going to show you what tuples are, but I'm not going to go into them in any detail whatsoever. How to work with events and delegates, we'll talk about that, but again, not in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage. And in lieu of doing this future value thing, I've been doing a different one, the calculator. All right. Now, this is not an extremely long chapter. And again, some of the stuff that's in here, we have already covered. There'll be a few things in here that they will talk about that are meant to be shortcuts. But again, they are more for people with advanced programming knowledge. All right. So what I'm getting to in here is I will go over everything in this chapter, but there will be a few occasions where I will say, you really don't need to know that for now. Now, you may need to know it for the written test because they'll ask you questions, but I'm saying we will not have tuples. We will not have delegates on any test that you take in here, any hands-on test. All right, so if you've got to know everything in here, it's just for the written test is what I'm saying. All right, how to code a method. Well, this is kind of what we did. Private. If something is public, it can be used by this form and by other forms. We're not there yet. Everything we're doing is just in one form, so we're making everything private. Then the return type, like I mentioned. Then the name of the method. If the method contains any parameters, they go in parentheses. If there are no parameters, you need an empty set of parentheses. Then the body of the method is within curly braces. So you put one or more statements in there. Here is an example. As it says, this is a method that has no parameters and it has no return type. So you'll notice there's nothing in the parentheses. That means there's no parameters. And the return type after the word private is void, meaning there is no return. So you can either do what they put there, or if you want to, you can put the word, just to put the word return there, all right, with nothing else, if you want to do that. I don't know what that buys you. It's a little more code, but you can put it in if you want to. So that's a method with no parameters. It returns nothing. Here's a method that has one parameter in it you're passing in called subtotal. It does some manipulation, and inside of here, it creates a new local variable called discount percent, and it figures out that it's either 20% or 10%. Then it returns that new variable. So you're returning discount percent. You'll notice that's a decimal. Why? Because that's a decimal. Whatever you're returning from here has to be that type of variable. All right. And these are things that aren't probably going to make a boatload of sense to you. But when we start working with them in a little bit more earnest, all right. So when we start using them all the time, they'll become second nature to you. All right. So here's something with 3 parameters. Notice there is a parameter called monthly investment. There is a parameter called monthly interest rate, and there's a variable called months. And then we're declaring a new variable down here called future value. We're figuring it out inside of here, then we're passing that back in. So since this is a decimal, and since you're passing back future value must be a decimal. This stuff, it has to map, so to speak. All right, if you want to allow other classes to access a method, you make it public. We're not there yet. That'll be after chapter 11 or so. If you want to make sure that only this particular forum can access the method, you make it private. That's why we've been doing that. If the method doesn't return a value, you say the return type is void. All right. To code a method that returns a value, you put in the right return type, and then you've got a return statement at the bottom. Methods can have 0, 1, or more parameters. They always need the parentheses. If you don't put the parentheses after the name of a method or a function or whatever you want to call it, if you don't put those in there, you're going to end up getting, I should say, an error message. Because if you don't put the parentheses, rather than it being a method or a function or whatever, it thinks it's a variable. This whole thing in here, just so you know, this whole thing. So from where you've got the name of the method, calculate future value, where you've got the parentheses and the stuff inside, the private and the word decimal, or here like this one, etc. That whole thing is known as the method's signature. That doesn't mean diddly right now. You don't have to know it. You will have to understand that in later chapters. All right, how do you call a method? There's 2 ways of calling it. You don't need the word this in there, but you can put it in. So if I wanted to call a method called disable buttons in here, I could just type in disable buttons, paren. What that means is this method doesn't return anything. I'm just calling it directly. Here, I'm calling get discount percent, but I'm returning it into a decimal value. So this is a method with no parameters that does not return anything. This is a method with 1 parameter, subtotal, that must return something of type decimal, and you take whatever it returns and you stuff it inside of discount percent. In the next example, again, there are 3 arguments. All right. And when you return something from calculate future value, what you return must be a decimal because you're stuffing it into future value. All right. They do mention that when you use methods, the IntelliSense does kick in. All right. They talk about passing by position. I wouldn't worry about that right now. Again, the part of the problem here is there's 10,000 things to learn. And I don't know about you, but most human brains can only accept so much at a time. So you do need to read this, and you will need to read it when you are doing the written tests. I should tell you again, I went into the campus yesterday and I talked to Patrick Glenn, and he told me that only one of you has picked up your C# book. So if the rest of you, please, if you're waiting on a book, they're there. Go into the Rankin-Wentzville campus and get it. And if you say, well, I live too far away, then try to call. If you live in St. Louis, then try to call somebody from St. Louis and see if they'll bring it to you. All right, I don't know how that works. You can have optional parameters. So let's talk about what these are. And let's start by just going through when you might want to use them. Let's imagine for a second that Rankin Technical College has employed me to write some kind of an application for them. I don't care what the application is. I don't care, period. I don't care. Okay. But I'm supposed to input a person's first name, last name, address, city, state, and zip code. Okay. Amongst other things. But I say, what campus is this going to be used at? All of them? And they say, no, it's only going to be used at the St. Louis campus. And I say, okay, at the St. Louis campus, how many of the people actually live or are from St. Louis? And they tell me 90%. I don't know if that's true or not, but just play along with me. If that's the case, I might want to take a field like state and basically optionally set it to Missouri. That's what they're doing here. They're saying that if you call this routine and you don't pass in a months, it'll default to 12. If you call this routine and you don't pass in an interest rate, it'll default to 5%. So if you know when you are passing in values, if you know when you pass in those values, okay, if you know that some of them will change very rarely, if ever, you might want to give them default values. All right. So right here, they're showing you different ways that you can call these things based on how many parameters you pass in. Now, again, this is one of those periods where I could see your head spinning here because there's just a lot of information. So as it says on the bottom here, the parameter list for a method can include one or more optional parameters. If they're optional, that means if you don't pass the parameter in, it'll take the optional value. All right, and that's what it says in here. You can read it yourselves, but that's what it says. All right, how to code an expression-bodied method. All right, here's where it's like, boy, this is a lot harder than it has to be. Okay, this is the new way of writing a switch statement in here. What I showed you earlier, if you remember, I'm not going to go back because I'd have to do a screen share or change my screen share. But what I did in there was I did a switch statement based on whether you entered a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5, etc. All right, whichever one of those you entered. All right, and then we returned at the end. This is just a faster way of doing it, and it results in a little less code. You will never, ever be given a test here where you are required to do this the way that it's shown. There may be questions on the written test that talk about using this kind of special method that they call an expression-bodied method. But the only reason that you would need this stuff, all right, the only reason that you would need it would be for a written test, never for a hands-on test, never for a lab, never for a homework. Okay, all right. Refactoring, I kind of mentioned that to you before. So what they're saying in here is this routine's getting too big. So they highlight the stuff in yellow here, and they hit a couple key, they hold down on the control key, hit the period key, and then what comes up is extract method. So what it'll do is it'll take this code and it'll put it into a brand new method for you. All right. And do you ever need to do that? I never use it. I never remember what the key combination is, but if you're interested, have a read on that. When you refactor, what you're typically doing is you're refactoring because one of the routines that you have created is too big. So you want to break it into 2 or more smaller routines. That's in a nutshell, that's what refactoring is about. All right. The next thing that's in here probably is amongst the hardest that are in here for you to understand. And that is passing by reference and passing by value. All right. If you pass something by reference, so if I pass a variable from one routine to another routine and I pass it by reference, I'm not passing the actual value that's inside of there. I'm passing the address in memory where that value lives. But when I pass by value, I'm passing a copy. What's the difference? If I pass something by reference, and if I pass it from one routine to another, in the routine that I pass it to, so the second routine, if I change it, it's a permanent change. If I pass it by value, I'm passing a copy. So if I change something, I'm only changing the copy. So if I need permanence, if I need to pass something and have it be changed forever, I pass it with what's called a ref parameter, REF. All right, if I don't need that, I pass it by value. And they'll show that here. So notice when you pass something by ref, you've got to put the word ref before it. We haven't even done one of those yet. And when you use it, you need the word ref. All right, so again, when you pass something by reference, what you're passing is not the value of the variable itself. You're passing the area in memory, all right, where the value lives. All right. Now, I've tried to give people this example before. I don't know again if it's a good example or not, but imagine where I work, it's 755 Parr Road and 751 Parr Road. All right, where I am this semester by Patrick is 755 Parr Road. Let's just pretend for a moment that Rankin moved out of that building. Let's just say they moved everything to the other building so that everything now is in 755 Parr Road. So when you go to 751 Parr Road now, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. But if you go to one of them, it's empty. So somebody else moves in there. All right, so somebody else moves in. So if previously at 755 Parr Road, there was the Larry Elms Training Center, and there was where Patrick was and everything else and all that other stuff. But if they move out and somebody else moves in, the address of that place doesn't change. All right, it is still 755 Parr Road. That's like passing something by value, so the value can change. But when you pass something by ref, it's a permanent change. All right, and if I screwed you up, I'm sorry. All right, they give you some more shortcuts here where you can use this discard value. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. All right, I figure you've got plenty to learn as it is. And this is the hardest part of the whole chapter in here. And it's called tuples. And you might say, well, we don't really need to know this. No, except there probably be some questions on the chapter 6 written test that use this. There probably will be. All right. And tuples are very similar, all right, to what you'll work on with databases. And that's what we do towards the end of the semester. It's the only reason I'm going to mention them right now. They are another way that you can work with stuff and pass stuff back and forth. They're a little harder to work with to get used to, but once you get used to them, they're actually easier to work with. All right. If I confused you with that, then I apologize in advance. You probably will need to know something about tuples, probably need to know something about them for the written test for chapter 6. So that would necessitate you reading the chapter. All right. The last thing that's discussed in here, at least I believe it's the last thing in this chapter, are working with events and delegates. All right. So they talk about how to generate an event handler for any event. Okay. Well, one of the things about this, and I am going to have to change my share for this, sorry, but if I go back in here and I stop sharing and share again and go back into our code that we had been working on here. All right, when we go through this, I've already mentioned to you that, for example, when I double clicked on the form, it by default, it brings up the form's load event. When I double click on calculate, it brings up that button's click event. But as you've seen previously, if I go back again to this button and click on it, and now I come over here and I click that lightning bolt, these are all the different things that the button can actually respond to. So if instead of like the click event, like we have right now, if I wanted the button to respond to, I don't know, the double click event or something like that, I could do that by giving that routine, all right, its own method, like we've got with the click event. Let's see, if we go into here, okay, and the default event for this is text changed, okay? So I'm going to come in here and I'm actually going to put this in. I'll remove it later. But what I'll do is I'm going to put in here a message box dot show, and I'm just going to say text changed. And I'm going to give it the same thing as a title, text changed. Whoops. Okay. Why did I do that? Let me save this. So do a file save, and let me run the program again. Now, notice as soon as I type something now, it says text changed. If I type something else, it's responding every time I've changed what's in there. If I remove something that's in there, see that? So by putting in 4 different letters and then removing them, that was 8 different text changed events in there. All I'm trying to tell you is there are literally hundreds of different events that the program can respond to. With that said, most programs respond to very few events. You know, like if there's buttons, of course, they will respond to a buttons click event, that kind of thing. All right. But usually, like I said, there are very few things that get responded to, as opposed to the number of things that you can potentially respond to. I'm going to get rid of that I put in there. So, all right. Why did I show you that? Why should you care? Because that's pretty much what a lot of this section that's in here is about. All right. Is it comes in and it starts talking about how you can go and bring up the different events that are in there. All right, so the events list, this is what I showed you. They use the text box. They put something in the text change. So it's very similar to what I just showed you. When you do this stuff, when you start to add stuff, remove stuff, etc., what happens is in the background, there are system files that get written to or stuff gets removed from them, etc. And that's the event wiring that they're talking about. Basically, it's stuff that happens behind the scenes so that the system can understand what it is you're trying to do. How to handle multiple events with one event handler. Let's pretend for a second, that all of the text boxes that we have in the program that we just looked at in the calculator program. Remember, there is one text box. There are 3 of them in there, one for number 1, one for number 2, and one for the result. We could write one generic routine and have all 3 text boxes respond to that one generic routine. That's what they're talking about right here. All right. Is it done? It depends. As your application gets more complex, the chances are better and better and better that yes, you will do something like that. For what we're doing, no. Hardly ever, if ever, are we going to be working with that. All right, the last thing they put in here is they do redo this future value program. They show you some of the code. I'm not going to run through that. What I am going to do, while I was just looking at this, I may have come up with the reason that our program wasn't working. So I'm going to, I'm going to see if I can make it work right now. Come on. So I'm going to change my share one more time and go back in here and go back into Visual Studio Code. All right. When we were working with this thing right here, all right, every time this changes, we want something to happen. Well, what do we have in here? We call determine result. What is determine result doing? All right. We wanted to do it on the text. I did the index here. So we want this. If it's 0, all right, let's do it this way. If it's a 1, it's a plus sign. If it's a 2, it's a minus sign. If it's a 3, it's a multiply sign. If it's a 4, it's a divide sign. If it's a 5, it's a modulo. And I don't remember what this thing said. Let's see. What is it? Select, enter operation. Okay. Whoops. Well, that should have been enter operation. Enter operation. Okay. Now, hopefully, I'll get this thing to work. We can go over it, and then we're pretty much finished for the period. So, still got that, which isn't good, but let's try again. 44, 33. We tell it we want to add. That isn't good. And we calculate. No, it still isn't catching it. Well, so there is still an error in here. I'm going to have to figure out that error. So this is what we're going to do. All right. I'm done speaking for today. Now, before you leave, though, just let me, so you hear this, I'm going to go back and add some comments to all the programs that I've gone over today. I'm going to make sure that both of the consoles work. I think they do, and I'll add a couple comments in there. Then I'm going to go back and debug this one, get it to work. All right. And I will send that out. Now, I may not have time to look at this till this afternoon, but I will get this done and it'll be sent to you by the end of the period. Or not the end of the period, by the end of the day. Tomorrow is a lab the entire period. When I start on Monday, the first thing I will do is to go over this program with it working. So tomorrow is a lab. And again, I've already gone over what is due. I've already gone over what is due, all right, for this Sunday, the 4th, all right? I'm not even sure. I think you're both still here, but does anybody other than questions about this program, do you have any questions about anything we've gone over today? Because we went over a lot. All right, so tomorrow will be lab. On Monday, we will go over this program in some detail, and then we'll jump into chapter 7. When we jump into chapter 7, we're going to be adding on to this, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be, remember, right now, if we run this program, and don't worry about that stuff, but if I come through here and I leave this blank and I click calculate, the program blows up because we can't convert a blank into a decimal. We're going to fix that when we come in on Monday. All right, and that's what we're going to do. So again, that's the plan at least. Tuesday then of next week, Tuesday will be another lab day. Wednesday, we will have our free test. And Thursday, so a week from today, you can count on having hot number 3. All right. Friday of next week then would be another lab. And just so you are aware of it, the week after that, that's like the week of the 20th or something like that. We're only going to go over one chapter. We're going to spend the whole week on chapter 8. All right. After we get done with that and get tested on that, we're going to go into 9, 10, and 11. And most of those we'll go through quickly. There's not going to even be a lot of new stuff in there. All right. We'll have one test that'll be on 9, 10, and 11. Then we're going to slow it way the heck down. I mean, way down. Because we've got really about 3 more things that we have to cover for the rest of the semester. We have to cover object-oriented programming, which includes classes and a few other things. That's chapters 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. We have to cover how to save stuff to a regular text file. All right, that's chapter 17. We want to use something that's called LINQ, which stands for line item or line integrated query. And you don't have to worry at all about it right now, but that's chapter 18. And then the rest of the book, 19, 20, 21, and 22. All right. We're going to be talking about databases, and I'm already working on that project offline here away from all of you, and we're going to be doing a database project collectively as a class. All right. So again, if there are no questions, then I will be here tomorrow. I will be on. All right. I will be online, in other words, but I'm not doing any taping because it's a lab period. All right. So I will see all of you on Monday then. Have a good weekend.